Yes, hello. I'm here with my friend Ian, and we're going to do a little bit of meditation practice for a few minutes. If you don't want to follow along, or if you're in a car or something like that, please feel free to skip forward in the chapters. And then after that, we'll go ahead and start summarizing and go and discussing Franz Xavier von Schoenwerth's Sash, The Night Sash. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do a little bit of a meditation practice. This is just a simple breathing meditation. So if you're in a place that's safe to do this, you can lower your gaze or close your eyes. Just start to relax your body from the top. Just kind of the muscles in your face and your jaw and your neck and shoulders and just down to your arms and hands. And then your upper back and middle and lower back. And then your torso, your hips and your seat. And then just relax your leg muscles at the top, and then the bottom of your legs, and then your feet. And we'll just go ahead and focus our attention on the breath, just wherever you notice it most, just coming in and out. And if your attention wanes, just gently bring it back to that breath. Try to have your attention fully on the breath. And thank you. And thank you, Ian, for indulging me in that. Thought it might might be a good thing to put out into the world and to maybe get people into meditation, or and also just to kind of get us in a good mood for the 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 story part of the podcast. And for the viewers, we had done a little bit of exercise and just calisthenics or and stretching beforehand, and please feel free to do that too, anyone listening or watching. Uh, But yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about the Franz Xavier von Schoenwerth story, The Night Sash. Um, I'll give a summary, and Ian, please feel free to to jump in at any time if I miss any details or anything. But yeah, this is a short story that I thought was pretty good, and thank you for suggesting it. So there was a hunter's widow, and she had a son named Hans, and they were always on the move. Um, and then one day they got lost in the woods, but they saw a castle, and there was a giant that was living there, and he took them in, and he eventually married the widow. Now, the boy was quite happy, but then he got older and he went out to hunt deer every day. So one day when he was hunting, he saw there was a clearing and there was a tree with no branches. And hanging from the tree was a sash that's worn by knights. And the boy went up the tree and he took the sash, which read, whoever puts me on will have human strength. So he did so, and he
Uh,
shot a deer
su-
and he carried it
j-
home on his back. Sorry.
Superhuman strength.
Oh, sorry. What did I say?
You said human strength, which is
Oh,
not
okay.
a
Yeah,
very good sash, but yeah,
yeah,
it
that,
is.
yeah, that, that, yeah, yeah, that wouldn't be very special. Um, so yeah, so he shot the deer and he carried it home on his back, and his mother and the giant could not believe their eyes, and they started worrying about the boy's strength, and they began to plot to get rid of him. So the giant feigned illness, and they told the boy that the only cure was milk from a lion. And not far away, there was a lioness living in a cave and nursing her cubs. And Hans went over there to try to get some milk for his stepfather. And when he approached the cave, the lioness was standing on her back paws, and her paws were kind of in a pleading gesture. And he threw his weapons aside and he playfully stroked her fur. And then she followed him to the castle. And when his parents saw what had happened with this lion following him, they decided to send him on another dangerous mission. And so, not far away, there was another castle belonging to another giant, and it was locked up tight. But he had a tree growing on his property that had special apples, and Hans was to get some of those apples to cure his stepfather. Um, Hans didn't know what to do about the apples, but when he got to the castle, uh, which is actually was actually by the seaside, um, and the castle was locked up tight because the giant was out with his friends robbing and looting. Uh, Hans grabbed some of the apples from the tree and he picked the lock on the castle door, and he found inside there was a woman that was stark naked and tied up. And she told him that she was a princess and the giants had kidnapped her. So Hans started a huge fire, and the smoke drew the attention of the army in the princess's country. And after a little while, they came and they started to prepare to bring the princess home. And they asked Hans if he wanted to come back with them, but he said he had to go take care of his father. Now, Hans was no longer in favor with his own family. His mother began to try to figure out why he was so strong. So she finally noticed the sash, and so she prepared a bath for him, and he took the sash off so she would dry it. And she took it to the giant, and the giant then found out a way to really get rid of Hans, and he poked out both his eyes, and he threw him out of the castle. Now the lion was right there at the door, and so they traveled for a while. Hans got exhausted, and they paused to rest for a while. and he was about to die of thirst. But then there was a wine merchant that happened to be traveling there, and the lion jumped up on the wagon, and she shoved a barrel down and took it to Hans. And the merchant had compassion for Hans, and he offered him a ride. They went to the city, and this was the princess's city. And she happened to be looking out her window at that time, and she recognized the man who had rescued her. And she dashed down the stairs, embraced him, and she took him to an artist for a pair of artificial eyes. And then she and Hans went to see her father, the king, who was happy to have someone succeed him. Now, during the festivities after the wedding, people noticed that Hans was blind, and the news spread among the people, and they got really angry and started rioting. They didn't want to have such a man leading them. And again, Hans was sent into exile with the princess. And so they had a nomadic life wandering around, but she took care of him. One day they went to a brook to take a rest, and then out of nowhere, two mice came. One was blind, and the other could see. And the other one led the blind one to the brook and sprinkled water on his eyes. And then he suddenly was able to see. And then the princess did the same with Hans, and he, of course, regained his sight. And so the two returned to the kingdom, and they got a huge welcome and lived happily for a long time. And when Hans passed away, the lion lay down on his grave and stayed there until she too passed away.
And they lived happily ever after.
Yeah. But yeah, a short story, but a lot kind of chock full of like symbolism, you know.
Yeah.
Uh yeah, I like
Yeah.
that story. What was it that maybe drew your attention to it?
Um, yeah, when I was looking through this and trying to find some, well, I had read this book a few years ago and had sort of kept a note of ones that felt particularly rich or felt like they could be maybe expanded into a longer story, something like that. And this was definitely one of the top ones on the list. Because it's just so much happened. It's only barely, it's like a paragraph over 2 pages.
Yeah.
And yet it's not your stereotypical fairy tale of like, you know, he gets the knight's sash and he does like one noble deed and another noble deed and a third noble deed and then he's done. That's the end of the story. That's kind of the typical pattern. But here
Hmm.
there's so many ups and downs and kind of so much drama. Um, and this poor Hans guy just keeps getting kind of screwed over by everybody.
Yeah.
Well, not everybody. The princess and the lion are pretty cool. Um, as is the king. The king doesn't seem to have a problem with him. But yeah, he just has such bad luck. And yet it all turns out for him in the end as it should do in a fairy tale. So I just really liked it. I liked it because it wasn't anything I'd really heard of before. A lot of the motifs in here. I mean the apples, I guess, but um, it's a stepson, it's an evil stepfather. That's kind of
Yeah.
unusual.
Yeah.
The lions are not very common. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it
yeah, I
seems.
don't know.
Mm. Yeah, I was gonna, as what other unusual things, there seems to be like this land of giants. You don't really see that. And it also catches your eye that they go at the beginning of the story, they go to a castle and it's inhabited by a giant, but he's friendly and he takes them in. And the story goes to say that Hans was happy for a while. But then the giant is dangerous after a while, but he's not directly physically dangerous trying to eat or kill or something like that. He puts himself in this passive aggressive kind of position of feigning illness and then making Hans go out and risk his life and hopefully die or whatever, because he and Hans's mother are threatened by Hans. So yeah, it's a lot of things are kind of weird about this story. I mean, kind of different.
Yeah, yeah, I hadn't really gotten that, hadn't seen that passive aggressiveness of it, but I think that's a good point. And yeah, the giant as just, I mean, just the stepfather. Like he's not, he's
Yeah,
described as a giant, and the second one is also described as a giant, but they're not. Other than that word, there's nothing about them that makes them monstrous, that makes them other, that makes them, Jack and the Beanstalk type giants or any other kind of fairy tale giants. This one, they're just the mom hooks up with the giant. They're married. He takes them in and eventually marries the widow. So it's not even like it's like a slow courtship. And yeah, and the boy is happy. Um, I did find it kind of interesting just to start out that the father who had passed is described as a hunter,
yeah,
um, and that the little boy was quite happy. And when he grew older, he went out every day to hunt for deer. So he's
yeah,
out like every day, sort of. There's this echo of his father in his life,
yeah,
his real father, whereas his sort of stepfather is this sort of monstrous other of some sort, even though he's not. He's labeled a giant, so there's something there, you know.
yeah,
Um, and he does end up being rather monstrous, just in kind of a human way, just being a jerk, murderous stepfather. But
yeah,
yeah, I just that was sort of the first thing that stood out to me was the sort of they don't explain it directly, but there's this link between Hans and his old father that sort
yeah,
of like I in my imagination of the story, he's like he's out there hunting because he remembers something about his dad, and so he's like,
yeah,
this is what my dad did. I'm going to go out there and do it myself, you know.
yeah. Yeah,
And
I
it's
think so
well, go
too.
ahead, yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, please, if you're gonna. Right.
Well,
Uh,
I was gonna say that, and that kind of gets him ready for um this for finding the Sash, which is sort of like the big inciting incident, the sort of call to adventure for him in this
yeah,
particular case is he looks up and sees this thing at the top of the tree, and if he had just walked away, like none of this would have happened to him,
yeah,
or if he hadn't been out hunting, following in his father's footsteps,
yeah,
he wouldn't have. I mean, I almost see it as him like going out to find his father in a in a
yeah,
in a
yeah,
metaphorical kind of a way. Like he's trying to find a way to interact or relate with his deceased father through hunting.
yeah,
So
yeah.
and that
I
earns him the sash. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, 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 you're good. Yeah, I totally think that too. I mean, you have so the story starts out with him and his mother after when his father has died, and they're wandering around for a while. It's this kind of drifting around. They don't have any home and everything. And then finally they go, of course, into the deep mystery, the dark woods. And far off in the distance, there's the castle. So it's this idea they're going way far away from where they started. They're lost, and then, of course, what do they find? They find a castle in the woods, which that's never a good thing, or usually not a good thing. And then who lives there but a giant? There's something strange, something wrong about that, or wrong for human life. It's not fitting for human life. But then but then they sort of adapt to that situation, right? And they become this sort of, on the surface, this happy family. Hans is happy, which I think shows his spirit of kind of being able to take weird situation or bad situation when he's rejected or something like that, and turn it into something where he can, it's not use it, but he can adapt to it and be okay and even be happy in that type of situation. He has this kind of, I don't know, mystical or just non-stubborn spirit or something like that. And then, yeah, like you were saying, and then he starts to recreate his father. He's going out every day hunting, so then he's starting to find, and that's when he gets older. He's starting to find his place in the world, going out hunting. Uh, I think of hunters as like people who are able to see far and to sort of aim their whole body and focus in on something and to connect with something to the benefit of themselves or the tribe or something like that. So basically it, they can see far and connect with the animal. And then that seems to be supported by the fact that he goes to the clearing and then he looks up, yeah, and he at the top of the tree. And of course tree is something that connects heaven and earth, and this tree has no branches too, which I don't quite, I mean, no, but it's
Oh,
special in some way, but it
I
you could connect it to the cross or something, but yeah, yeah,
I got something about that if we want
yeah,
to
yeah.
if you want to pause real quick.
No, no.
Um, to me, it like there's this like neon sign of like the impossible task. Like how do you like branches are steps on
Right,
the ladder. You know,
right,
they're aids to achieve height or to
right,
achieve whatever it is that's at the top of the tree. You know, you can get on the branch, you can pull yourself up. This one,
right,
there's no support. He's entirely on his own. It's
right,
just this like, you know, like a palm tree or something, like a single trunk. And yet the thing that he needs is at the top of it. So it becomes this like right off the bat, even though it doesn't advertise itself as any kind of an impossible thing, it's like, oh, you have to do this without assistance, without help, without rest, without anywhere to like hold yourself on. It's just kind of a groundless situation.
right.
And he just shimmies to the top and he takes the sash down. So it does speak to his sort of heroic, you know, the sort of like you were saying, like he just sort of like does the thing. You know, he's there and he's like, I'm happy with my dad. I'm making the best of it. Like he doesn't it almost has this sense of like the holy fool. Like I think Parsifal from the Grail myth is I think that's where that word comes from. Parsifal is like holy fool or something.
Hmm.
But in this case, it's just like the kid doesn't even see the problems. He just kind of like later when the parents are plotting against him, he's just like, "Oh, I love my mom and dad, and I'm gonna go
Yeah,
save my stepdad. I'm gonna save his life. He's sick, poor guy." You
yeah.
know, and like completely oblivious, but it's his own kind of good nature that wins the day for him again and again because he's able to just sort of float past these obstacles that would otherwise sort of drag him down. And I think the climbing up, the being able to climb up the tree to get the sash is sort of like a maybe like a King Arthur sword and stone kind of a thing. Like
Hmm.
it's his way of showing or at least enacting that he is some sort of like destined part, like he's destined for that sash, you know, because he's
Yeah.
able to just climb up the tree and grab it, no problem. So yeah, just to kind of expand on that tree image a little bit more. I thought that was one of the first things that like I was like, ooh, what does that mean? I got to figure it out, you know?
No, I
So
think that's great. Yeah, actually, I didn't realize that. And yes, so it's this tree that is this impossible task. And like King Arthur's sword, it has the message. I mean, I don't know if I don't think King Arthur's sword has the message, but I mean, the sass has the message. Whoever wears this will have superhuman strength. It's like there is one person, that there is a fate out there, and then yeah, he's the person that's supposed to claim that sash. And I also thought of it's like Jack and the Beanstalk, right? I mean, you have a giant in a castle, and you have the boy that goes to the castle, and then you have a something that is like the beanstalk that connects heaven and earth that he has to go up and then get something from. And then he threatens the giant when he retrieves that thing.
mm.
So that's things are mixed up in a different order than Jack and the Beanstalk, but it seems like a lot of the same elements are there.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that, but I think you're right. The it's sort of like it takes the giant from Jack and the Beanstalk and puts him on the ground, but it does start off with both of them start off with a widow and her son, and the
Yeah.
son is kind of naive, you know,
Yeah.
kind of a little innocent. So yeah, I definitely see that. I also wanted to say the you had sort of said, "Oh, maybe the tree is like the cross or something
Mm,
like that." And I think that's also fair because the cross as a symbol is also like the impossible task. How does the innocent man willingly go to his fate and just accept it?
right.
It's not too dissimilar.
Yeah.
Um, and it is something that you go to the top of, you sort of achieve,
Yeah.
with Christ, it's the dying to be born again, but here it's the climbing to the top and retrieving the sash and coming back down with it. So
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah,
little
that's
bit of an
right.
echo there. Yeah.
Yeah. And with Christ also, you have this kind of reunion with the spiritual father,
Mm.
which kind of happens throughout this story. And you also have a hero that is a non-violent hero, and that echoes throughout this story. He has the giant that's repeatedly after him, and later on, the people are rioting and they're after him. But he kind of goes into exile, or he kind of still tries to serve them, like he still tries to serve the giant. He's like turning the other cheek with the giant. And I'm still going to play your game, and maybe he can convert the giant. It seems like he doesn't, but he doesn't try to get back at the giant, and the
Yeah. And
giant even
ultimately it works
tortures
out in
him.
his favor. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's right.
Yeah, I've been thinking of the Giants as like like when you're a kid and you see an adult and they're scary.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I mean the sort of the comedy version of it is the Peanuts cartoon where like the teacher is on wah, 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 and you only see her from like the waist down. It's just her skirt or whatever.
right.
But that sort of alienation between like adults and children, and you know, um, in this case, you could have it. You could be like, oh well, Hans as an infant had this sort of archetypal sense of a father figure, but the being to which like his actual father was maybe kind of a jerk. If we're gonna literalize the metaphor here, it could be sort of like the ideal father versus the real father. And the ideal father that you sense, like the sense of like, oh, I should have a parent who loves me and takes care, the good enough, kind of psychologically speaking, the good enough parent
Yeah,
becomes like, oh, he must have died somewhere because all I have is this giant who scares me and I don't know, but he still wants to take care of him. So it's not there. There's kind of a Hans is still caring for the giant. So there's not quite the level of antagonist and antagonism
antagonism. Yeah,
between like you would have with Cinderella and a stepmother. Like that's a pretty obvious frictional relationship there. She's always sort of putting her down and pushing her in the ash and all that. But
yeah,
um yeah, I was thinking the giant as sort of like the reality of the not good enough father,
yeah.
and the way he kind of turns the mother um
Mm,
as well, because I mean the mother doesn't seem particularly negative towards Hans until Hans is a threat to the father.
yeah,
Until Hans shows up with a deer. He like goes out and brings home dinner, and they're like, "Oh, what is this kid
yeah,
doing? He's terrifying. He can carry a whole deer on his back." I mean, I guess that's a moment of like any son who has a repressive father. At some point, you're big enough that like he doesn't quite have the same power over you that he used to, and all of a sudden you're
yeah,
sort of a threat to his power, and like that's a pretty common motif for a lot of kids growing up. So
yeah,
I could see that mapping onto when he comes back with the deer.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, for sure. And yeah, if he was trying to domineer him, he could, he's a giant, he could domineer him physically, but then Hans comes back and he has super strength and competence and everything, using weapons, killing the deer and everything. Now, the giant doesn't so much have the physical dominance over him. You had mentioned the giant sort of turning his mother too. I think there's some evolutionary psychology basis for this. I read a book on murder by the evolutionary psychologist David Buss, and he mentions modern day episodes of women trying to or killing their biological children in order to be more attractive to men, or I should say, there's no husband or father in the picture, and so it's a woman with biological children who will, uh, kill her own children to try to be more attractive to like a potential mate.
Mm.
And maybe there's something about that with Hans here. Maybe there's the idea that they'll have more children, or just yeah, some kind of there's some basis for Hans' mother changing her way of viewing Hans. Unfortunately, as life sometimes goes, and as these fairy tales will sometimes show us without really much apology or anything.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. They sort of it's subtle, but it's undeniable. Like they don't put it in your face, but it's like you can't avoid it. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's I was listening to some I think it was a Jungian podcast about the devouring mother, and they made the point that like for most of human history, one, there wasn't birth control. So like pregnancy just kind of happened when it happened. And then two, like if you gave birth to a child and you didn't have the resources, like a second child, and you didn't have the resources to support the second child, you might have to kill it in order to, because you didn't really have clinics or anything like. So like there is this sort of dark mother archetype in the human psyche, in the human evolution of like, in order to be a good mother to the children you have to, you have to, in this case, it seems like it's more she wants to protect the stepfather giant more than she wants to protect her own son. So she's kind of hitched her identity onto him. But I think that happens as well. I think I don't think that that's particularly like the archetypal realm. I think that's pretty human.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like you said, they have to sometimes. There's some tough choices. I read in that same David Buss book, he mentioned anthropological data of native tribal peoples that have had to do this, and the anthropologists who have been there, right with them, they saw the mothers very much love the children, and but they just knew they had to do that for survival of the group, the family or the whole group. And yeah, it wasn't done out of malice or anything, but yeah, it's a real thing. This devouring mother kind of idea.
Yeah, yeah, the reality of death and limited resources.
I
Oof.
was also thinking, you mentioned Hans is kind of like a holy fool, and he's kind of still caring for the stepfather. And I think of that too, but I think also maybe this is part of his maturing process of where he's trying to do his duty. So his
Mm.
parents have, so he thinks his stepfather is sick, and his parents have asked him to do something. And it's funny, they have this ill intent toward him, but they ask him to do stuff, and so he goes ahead and does it. And this also reflects, I think, Christ in a way of like doing the duty, even though it can lead to death. It leads to danger. It's not for immediate benefit, but yeah, that's what I thought. He's kind of doing his duty, and the story makes this clear that it's very important to him. He's virtuous in this to a fault, because after he saves the princess that has been locked up in the second castle, uh, he obviously has a chance for new life, love, glory, safety, and adventure, a different kingdom and everything. But he still remembers, no, 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 I need to help my stepfather. He's sick. I need to do my duty. This is what I came here to do, even though a new life completely presents itself to him. So it's kind of this, almost this tale of the Christ-like virtue of Hans.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I like that because it definitely like his return to caring for his father is well intentioned and clearly virtuous, but it's based on a lie, right? Because his father's not actually sick. Which is not to discount any of your points,
No, no, no. Yeah, yeah.
I think your points are totally valid as far as like with Hans and his figure and what he represents.
Mm,
And I can see this like he's continually trying to save his father.
yeah.
And and I mean, how many of us continually try and save our parents from something, whether it's just reenacting, oh, I have to be a good boy because mom can't, mom got sick that one time and she was in the hospital and I think maybe it was my fault. And if I'm bad, she might have to go back to the hospital. I got to take care of her, or my dad's sick and I have to take care of him. I have to go fight this lion. I have to go fight this giant and steal some apples. Like he's trying to save someone who doesn't actually need saving, but he's coming at it from a virtuous place. And I think the tale is kind of pointing towards like, well, I mean, actually, he kind of does it to a fault, right? Because he is presented with this princess, and yet, and this other life and the safety and all of that, and yet he says, "Oh, I have to go back home," and it's that third time, I don't know, second or third time, but it's the last time. Either way,
Yeah.
he goes home, and they finally figure out how to take what they want from him,
Yeah.
and weaken him, and then get rid of him, and that's what they were trying to do all along. So he has this like it's really interesting that they to me that they blind him at that point because actually I want to go back and talk about the princess too, but just to kind of
Mm,
finish this thought. Um it's interesting that they blind him because he's been blind the whole time to their trickery. And
yeah,
in
that's
this
right.
in the moment that he's blinded, it's the moment he actually sees he clearly understands who these people are and how they're treating him.
Yeah.
And like he can't like he goes and he wanders after that. He doesn't stick around in the home anymore. So clearly he's caught on some level of like, yeah, I can't stay here. They're going to kill me, or they tried to kill me, or they won't have me around, and I can't be there anymore.
Or
So he's
does
kind of
doesn't the giant throw him out? I thought it
You're
it
right.
mentioned that. So,
You're right. You're right. Yeah, no. He wasted no time. Make sure he was rid of Hans. He poked both his eyes out and threw him out of the castle.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
But
then, yeah.
but yeah, there's this finality about that. Like you were saying, he finally realizes but yeah, there's a finality that they can finally get rid of him. There's something about that. Like it's as if, yeah, poking his eyes out allows the giant to finally get physically throw him out, whereas somehow he couldn't before.
Yeah. Well, I think that was the sash. I think because
I'm sorry, you're
they,
right. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
they
right.
steal they
That's
steal the
right.
status sash off of him.
That's right. He had been
Um,
protected.
but it is kind of interesting that if we're looking at the sash as sort of this like, holy boon he has won by climbing the
Mhm.
tree, like it's not permanent. Like he's able to lose it.
Yeah.
So there's something there that implies maybe incomplete maturity or incomplete stepping into his power or something like it was able to be taken from him. Um, so
It could
and
be.
maybe it's supposed to, I don't know, but
I was thinking it I was thinking of Samson and obviously in the
hmm.
Bible Samson and Delilah super strength in his hair supposedly Delilah can betray him, cuts off his hair, now he's weak. And I was thinking the yeah, you're saying it's kind of an unstable gift, and or at least it's unstable right now because maybe he hasn't learned to kind of fully embody it or something like that. And yeah, there's something about how the mother can trick him, which is like Samson and Delilah. The mother can trick him using the vulnerability of his, like you're saying, his lack of wisdom, his lack of sight and understanding. We have what appears here to be a nice, loving home. Mom, dad, home. We're protected from the elements, but he doesn't realize he is not safe. This is not love. And so, yeah, he's blind, and she and they are able to use that to kind of to obviate this boon that he has received from heaven, which seems real, right? Like if you, through your education or your experience out in the world, you have learned, you have advanced in some way, you have matured in some way, gained some wisdom. But if you cannot see someone right next to you that is trying to harm you, they can kind of unman you, or they can, you know, separate you from your gift, right? And then maybe you can spend a long time in addiction or a long time kind of lost because you were shaken so much by that experience. Is there something like that in there, maybe?
Yeah,
About,
I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. The sort of it's the his sort of holy fool nature finally wears thin. Like it's that
yeah,
something sort of doesn't. But also it's like it's the one thing that finally gets him out of the place he's stuck in. So
yeah, yeah,
it almost like justifies the tragedy. And like if you're looking at this like zoomed out, 1,000 miles or something, and you're just bird's eye view, like
mm,
you're looking at it, it's like this is what the universe had to do to get him out of that house.
this is his
Because he
fate
wasn't
still.
willing to, yeah, he wasn't willing to
That's
leave
right.
on his own. He wasn't awake enough to
That's
see
right.
that he needed to leave.
That's right.
Um, I also wanted to say a couple of things about the sash. Whoever puts me on and wears me will have superhuman strength. So there's something about the superhuman nature of the strength that kind of implies like in Jungian psychology, you can be inflated by an archetype. So like people who are like, oh, I am Jesus returned, and they're fully convinced they're the coming of the Messiah. Like they're inflated by the Christ archetype. They completely identify that particular piece of the psychology has completely overtaken their view of themselves. It's become who they think they are. And I was wondering if there was something like that comparably here, or something like no, like when you like as a kid you kind of think you can do anything. There's this
Yeah.
sense of like it's superhuman power or something, and then having that like come up against real life, you
Yeah.
know? Because despite all of his stuff that scares the giant and the mother, the only thing he actually does with his superhuman strength is carry a deer. Everything else in the story is him being kind or him using his wits. It's not like a muscle kind of a thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. And he doesn't break into the castle later on. He picks the lock.
exactly. He doesn't even, I don't know, like Hulk jump himself over the wall.
Yeah.
Anything like that. Yeah. And even with the lion, like he goes there to confront her. I guess he has weapons, so there's maybe some sense of it being potentially a conflict, but
Mm,
she's there in a pose of pleading. So just
mm,
like, I sort of see her praying. I don't know, but like, or
mm.
just sort of like, please don't hurt me.
Yeah.
And he's able to. It's funny that we've been talking about him as being kind of blind to the parents, but he's very insightful with the lion. He's like, oh, this lion's
Yeah.
friendly. Abby, so he just kind of gives her a little belly rub, and she's like friends for life.
Yeah.
Um, which you can psychologize that and say, oh, that's him, you know, um, integrating his instinctual nature, his animal, his
Mm,
beast-like whatever kind of nature, which is an important step in the individuation process.
mm,
Um, but it's so easy for him, just like getting the sash was so easy for him.
mm.
So yeah, I don't know.
But yeah. Yeah, it's true. He doesn't seem to use his superhuman power, but maybe that's part of the reason the lion is sort of subservient with him, is pleading with him because she already knows here's this young man who can roam around every day, who can win a deer, who can shimmy up a tree, who can do the impossible thing, shimmying up a tree without branches, who now has superhuman strength and has the sash of superhuman strength from heaven above. Uh, he is kind of, maybe that's why she's pleading with him. He is more than mere beast can beat.
Yeah,
And
he's like he's already earned the integration. He's already earned the friendship of the lion, or the respect and the fear and the of the lion before he even goes to confront her. So he kind of comes prepared. That's
yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
something like that seems like. And then, yeah, she's always, and then forever after that, she's less. Is she his protector? She's kind of a protector companion, but not so much like a guard, but like more like an equal or friend or part of himself or something, a always loyal part, that after he goes back to the giant's castle and he comes out and she's still there. And then later when he's after he dies, she comes to his tomb and dies with him. There's this companionship, this spirit animal or something like that she's always with him.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. The sort of spirit animal, protector animal, kind of a thing. Something I was noticing, and as you were talking about it right now, is we never see the lion and the princess together in the story. They are never talked about
Mm,
as meeting, despite the fact that like they're both very loyal to Hans.
yeah,
He has the lion. He goes to rescue the princess. No lion. He leaves the princess. The lion's with him as he gets exiled. Um, and then and then the lion gets the wine for him off the back of the merchant's cart, and then the merchant drives him into town, and the lion's with him at the end. So there's this through line of like, oh, well, the lion must have been with him all along.
yeah,
But the whole time he's wandering with the princess, there's no mention of the lion either.
yeah. That is
So that's
interesting.
that's I don't know necessarily what to make of. Actually, okay, here's a thing. Hmm. So Hans is described as wandering three different times in the
Mm,
story.
mm-hmm,
First time's with his mother,
mm-hmm,
second time's with the lion, and third
mm-hmm.
time's with the princess.
Yeah,
And there's this like, and the lion is a lioness. She's a female
yeah,
lion. So all three of them are like female figures.
yeah,
One being sort of negative in that his mother ends up being cruel to him. The second one is an animal, but a caring animal, and then the third one is a caring human. So it's almost like this sort of evolution of the feminine figure or partner to the hero throughout the story.
yeah.
That's neat. I hadn't seen that. If I hadn't have been thinking about the sort of swap between the princess and the lion, I don't think I would have noticed that.
Hmm.
That's neat.
Yeah, yeah. And the lion, it's funny. There's an irony that the lion is they he comes to her because of her milk. She's maternal. She's life-giving, milk-giving. Although she does leave her cubs, I guess, for him. So
They
I
kind of
don't.
they kind of
Maybe
gloss over
we'll.
that, yeah.
Yeah. But but yeah, she's mater. This lion is maternal, whereas his mother is, or at least ends up being like the real beast. At least
Oh,
together with the
yeah.
giant.
Well, that's interesting because the mother abandons Hans and the lion abandons the cub. So it's almost like I don't know, there's like a parallel
Parallel.
movement between
Yeah.
the two. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Neat.
Yeah.
Neat. What do you think of the other giant who doesn't even make an actual appearance? He's off. What is he off doing? Robbing and looting wherever he could
Yeah.
with his friends.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, so when there's only one giant in a castle in the story, that seems like a unique thing. But now that there's another castle kind of nearby with another giant, and they say he's robbing and looting and doing whatever bad stuff he can, that makes you feel like this is a whole land of giants, and that's where he and his mother have wandered into this whole time. There's something about the world for him and his mother since his father died. They've been in a world of kind of danger and chaos and things. And then yeah, thinking of evolutionary psychology, yeah, she found a way to kind of make the best of it. Unfortunately, it ends up being bad for her son, but if you're literally in a land of giants, you can't necessarily judge his mother too harshly. Um, and yeah, I thought of in the Odyssey, the island of the Cyclopes, it's only giants there, which at least in Homer it seems like giants mean something like a very primitive, uncivilized, brutal, rapacious way of living. These are people that they live, I think all the giants live alone, and they have their flocks of sheep or whatever, but yeah, they're cannibals when Odysseus and his men come. So there's this idea that they're just like pre-civilized savages. I think it's very important that they live alone. They can't even like live with each other. uh,
Yeah, I mean that's very if we're going to talk about an idealized archetypal father and then a
mm,
violent father who is, maybe beats his kids or is just, modern day world it'd be like, oh, my father's a drunk. He comes home angry every night and like smashes the plates when he's in a bad mood. Like
yeah,
that's a giant. That's a maybe not directly a cannibal, but he's definitely like sucking all the love and the joy out of the house.
yeah,
Um, and you wonder what the hell happened to the father that your genetics are telling you need to be looking for, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Um, yeah, and it's interesting the if we sort of take the sort of masculine, if we look at the masculine, there's the dead father, the disappeared father, then there's the giant stepfather figure, then there's the other giant. So that's like, oh man, it's not just my stepfather. There's other bad men out in the world, and
yeah,
and this one has kidnapped and locked up a princess who's stark naked.
yeah,
So like clearly some bad intent there is implied. Um, and um and then the only other well no, then there's the merchant who's also
right.
described as masculine. Masculine, they
Hmm.
use he for him. Um and then there's the king. Um so I wasn't really thinking of the merchant, although I guess he kind of fits in as sort of a bridge between the two. But with the king you have a father who is happy that Hans is there and names him his successor. So
Yeah,
it's almost like a return of the idealized hunter father. It's just sort
yeah,
of like, oh, here's a father who accepts me and who loves me and
yeah,
who isn't trying to poke my eyes out and kick me out of his house,
yeah.
you know. Um,
And who now I have a place to live, I have a place in the world.
yeah.
Although of course then he's kicked out by everyone else because of his defect.
Yeah. Which was caused by so it's almost like a trauma thing, right? Because
Yeah,
it's his defect is something that was caused by the incident that like really broke his innocence and his relationship with his stepfather.
that's right.
So there's this thing and then the unwelcome nature of the world um that he's sort of oblivious to and then forced to face when he's blinded and thrown out of the house sort of that the evil figure moves into the populace, like you're saying, but it's no longer in the father figure. It's just this sort of echo of it in the populace.
Mm,
Um, and yet that sends him into exile for a third time. But this time the princess goes with him. So he's got not just a lion to find him wine, but he's got somebody who can restore his sight.
yeah.
Um,
And I should
with
say
the,
she got the painted eyes on him, so she was trying to let him be a fit for that society. Like she was
Mhm.
doing what she could, to paper over things to for the appearance and everything. And that is kind of, I think, what the positive feminine or like a good wife or girlfriend would do sometimes to try to help others to kind of get along to,
Mm.
even if something's not quite right for the fit between like the person they're trying to protect and the group. And by the way, she's like the opposite of his own mother in this. Instead of protecting the group and kicking out Hans, now she's trying to help Hans to be accepted by the group, even if he has something that they don't like. Oh,
Yeah, yeah, and she's also the princess is also um making the best of a situation, like with the painted eyes, especially. like she's making the best of it in sort of a mirror, the sort of mirror way with the mother
Like
was making the
Hans.
best of it
Ah,
by friending the giants in the land of giants, like you were
yeah.
saying.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, just sort of, and it is like the mother is trying to earn her place in the world by sacrificing the son, and the princess sacrifices her place in the world to care and support for Hans. So
Yeah. Yeah, right.
it is very mirrored. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, speaking of the princess, I just want to go back to like the apples, which are usually the big quest item in a whenever they
Mm.
show up in a fairy tale, they're usually like an important thing. And here
Yeah,
they're just
that's
like
funny.
he just grabs the apples. Um and then so the apples are outside the castle and then he goes into the castle. So the apples are almost like the lure to get him in there. And
Mm.
he opens the door and there's this naked woman tied up, I assume, to a chair, but who knows? Um and I just think it's funny, you know, because one, like you don't have a lot of stark naked anything in a fairy tale.
Yeah,
It's kind of an
I've never seen
unusual
that.
image.
Yeah.
And here's this like innocent, relatively young man breaking into a door and seeing this like, you know, naked lady on the
Yeah.
floor, this naked princess on the floor.
Lusty
And I just
young
thought it was
man.
funny that that like he doesn't do anything. He's very respectful, but he starts a huge fire. And I'm just sort of like thinking it through of like you know, the lust of a young man and sort of the burning of it and the like the
That's
huge
funny.
fire. It just makes me laugh. I don't think that the metaphor
It's like an
me
explosion from him.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that alerts the well, actually that's interesting. That alerts the army and the ships who are sort of like the like a male I mean, at least in these days, the you know the army and the soldiers were predominantly, if not entirely, male. At least that's how we understand them.
Hmm.
Um, and so there is this sort of call to a healthy masculine there
Mm.
of the king that eventually accepts him as a successor. Like the soldiers are showing up on behalf of the king to rescue the princess.
Mm.
So there is sort of a like the first introduction of the feminine and especially, you know, assuming desirable feminine, the sort of the masculine rush, the excitement and the lust and the attraction, like that calls something from the good masculine and kind of brings something of it into his life,
Mm.
and he earns that connection by caring for the princess instead of, you know, taking advantage of her or kidnapping her or raping her or whatever, you know, it is. And there's not a lot of rape in fairy tales, but we were just talking about Greek myths, and
Yeah.
that's that's pretty close. There's a lot of rape in Greek myths, unfortunately. Um, I don't see Zeus being quite so polite about it.
Yeah.
Um, but but yeah, that's really interesting because I didn't that when I first read the story, and even when I read it like shortly before our recording here, that scene in particular of like, how come he's starting a huge fire and what does that mean and why are the ships like the whole thing felt out of place to me, and now it kind of makes sense. So
Mm.
that's cool. So I don't know. Do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts on that? I don't want to.
I mean, it is interesting that he doesn't try to fight the giant or something like that. He's just being practical. I mean, it's more practical to bring all of her society's resources to bear to save her rather than try to full-heartedly fight the giant dragon, whatever you want to say it is, you know?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, there is a contrast between the behavior of the giant, which is your sort of typical roaming kind of pirate-like rapacious force on the world. You know, we get our livelihood by stealing it by force. That's, you know, that's the way of just the beast or whatever. And then yeah, we get sex and babies from stealing women and raping them, you know. But then there's the opposite here of Hans, and uh, he picks the lock. He shows some dexterity. He takes the apples to try to save his father, whom who has told him that he's sick and he needs apples. And then yeah, instead of doing anything bad with the lady, uh yeah, he sends a signal to society, and also, by the way, to her father, which is sort of the proper way. Naturally a father will try to protect the daughter, and the this time the giant has stolen her, but now he brings that protectiveness back. And he's kind of setting things right. And then he keeps doing that kind of to a fault by not going back with them and still doing what he thinks is right, and kind of trying to make whole his stepfather, whom he thinks is sick, who has told him.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you
Hmm.
have a lot of people that are acting badly, but Hans everywhere is kind of trying to do good.
Yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. And in that same way of like, it seems to be just sort of the natural effect of his virtuous nature.
Yeah.
It's just like he doesn't seem to think about it. He doesn't seem to waver. They ask Hans to come with them when they rescue the princess, but he explains he has to bring the apples back to his father. Doesn't imply any conflict on his part. It's just sort of like, no, I gotta go take care of my dad.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, 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 yeah,
But yeah, he has to develop that sight eventually, that wisdom. I mean, he's got the virtue down. He has virtue, he has strength. But yeah, if he's going to truly settle down and have a stable kind of love relationship home, he needs to have that wisdom, that sight. And he finally develops that only at the end of the story with the help
yeah,
of some female, feminine companionship, loyal feminine companionship.
yeah. And like looking at it that way sort of justifies the mob rioting against him because they don't want a king who's virtuous but not wise.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like the kingdom as a system is like, no, you're not ready for this, and they push him out.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of similarly to the father pushing him out, but maybe less maliciously, because they want him to be able to see again. And
Mm.
I always like mice. Um,
It's a cute kind of
yeah.
image. These little tiny mice, these one blind mice. Do you know anything about that, or why do you like the mice? But yeah, the little two little tiny mice, one blind leading the other one.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. There's something about especially contrasted with the lion, there's something very loud and ferocious about maybe not this lion, but lions in general.
Mm,
And I have some sort of a dichotomy in my head of like the lion and the mouse.
mm,
I don't know where it came from, maybe a book I had when I was a kid, but I always think of the two
mm,
together. But
mm,
there's something about the mouse that's like it's small. It's pretty defenseless. Like most
mm,
things could kill a mouse if they wanted to.
mm,
And it's relatively quiet, so it's just sort of like squeak, squeak.
mm.
And I think there's something about that like you can map onto the quiet voice of intuition, the quiet voice of
Yeah,
conscience, the quiet voice that like sort of will guide you but won't force you to do anything. I feel like the mouse is often a good symbol for that.
yeah,
As
yeah. I
as it
think.
is as it does here. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think here they're kind of at their wits' end. They've been thrown out. He's blind. They've been thrown out of her father's city. He's blind, and then yeah, this suddenly just these two little mice appear and just kind of give him the hint, give the princess the hint. This is what you do. And
Yeah.
this is how you heal Hans. This is how you give him
Yeah.
his sight.
And wow, and so wow. So with what you were saying before about he's got the virtue, but he's lacking the wisdom, you know, he finds the wisdom, he's given the wisdom by following the lowly creatures,
Yeah,
by
yeah,
sort of this
yeah.
humility, by sort of this like, and it's really interesting, like if we look at, I'm seeing this parallel between the power, the superhuman strength of the
Yeah.
Sash, which
Mm.
like you'd think would be the thing that would get him to win the kingdom
Yeah.
and triumph over the giants and get everything he wanted, and yet it doesn't do him a bit of good through the whole story. It gets him a deer and it gets him in trouble, and maybe it convinces the lion that he's dangerous. We don't know that for sure because it doesn't actually state that.
Yeah.
But the thing that actually earns him the kingdom is following the mice, is doing what the mice do, just that
Yeah.
sort of quiet, like, following that quiet little voice. And that's where if we're following your metaphor of like the sight and the wisdom, like that's where he actually earns the wisdom, and
Yeah.
he out of that he gets the right to actually step into his rightful place as the king, as the ruler. Which,
Yeah.
if we're talking psychologically, it's like the self kind of is able to come into the central role of your own life. You're finally able to kind of like be in your life the way you're meant to, instead
Yeah.
of always being kicked out and exiled from your own place of center.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And this also sort of echoes a little bit of a progression, maybe from like a Greek uh, or an early Greek worldview based on sort of strength. I'm sort of thinking of like Hercules and however many challenges or whatever it's called that he had to overcome. And we have more to like a Jesus, kind of being self-sacrificial, kind of virtuous, and maybe a little bit seemingly foolish, in that you're not really catching on to some people's bad intent. And then yeah, eventually kind of developing into wisdom. I think of Plato or something like that, combining with Christianity or something. So
Yeah. Yeah, and through like blindness, exile, and a nomadic wandering life like that,
yeah, right.
so sort of the humbling of it prepares you to be at the place where wisdom can be received.
Yeah.
That's neat.
So yeah, yeah, pretty good story. You have any other thoughts about this?
Um, no, I think we pretty much covered it. I mean, there's the last little line about the lion laying down on his grave and staying there until she too was dead. Doesn't mention what happens to the princess.
Mm,
One assumes she, they live happily ever after and die together as well. But there's something about the lion being like the first thing that actually
mm,
befriends Hans in a healthy way, being also the thing that sort of ends up with him at the end. I think that's a
yeah,
nice, it's a nice, like, I don't know, she was with you all along kind of a thing,
yeah.
you know? Yeah.
And
But
and yeah, especially poignant, I think, for someone who has his type of childhood. Father was gone, maybe longing for him in some way, wandering around to like a very long way away, and then being in a dangerous household as a child, and then being kicked out of that and them trying to kill you and everything. And then finally, and then you go out in the world and yes, you find some kind of help, some kind of beauty and love that helps you and that strengthens you. And then yeah, it's there with you all along and it follows you to your death.
mhm.
Yeah, that seems like a fitting kind of end to his real life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's- and I
Okay.
guess a fairly fitting end of the podcast too.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good. Okay, well, thanks for choosing this story. It was really good. I
Yeah,
look
thanks
forward
for
to our
thanks
next
for
one.
diving in.